Hi everybody and welcome to the most terrifying pandemic of our time. You're standing in the middle of your bedroom, maybe still in your pajamas, maybe just scrolling aimlessly. But something feels off. The air hums differently. Notifications blink. The group chats aren't filled with memes anymore, but confusion. Panic. Rumors about some virus, some mysterious illness from far away, have gone from background noise to main headline. And now it's here. No, not nearby. Here. The city. Your neighborhood. Maybe even your street. You open your window, and the world outside is hushed. Streets that once honked and bustled are still. There's a shiver in your spine, and not just because it's cloudy. You suddenly realize, you're living history. And history has a way of sneaking up on you with bad breath and no warning. Oh, and you probably won't survive this. Well, statistically, you will. But your sleep schedule, your hairline, your sanity. Yeah, those are done for. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your location and the local time in the comments. Let's see how global this insomnia party really is. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're there on day one. The moment it becomes real. You refresh the news, again. More numbers. More red maps. The word, confirmed, begins to feel like a curse. It's not just about the virus, it's the unseeable fear. You picture germs glowing on your doorknob, on your groceries, even your cat's nose. Suddenly, your fingers are traitors. You wash them until they're raw. 20 seconds feels like 20 years. Outside, your neighbor coughs. You freeze. That's not just a cough. That's a plot twist. It wasn't always like this. Remember 2019? When the weirdest global thing was some guy licking an airplane toilet seat for TikTok fame. Now the entire world is elbow bumping like it's prom night at a middle school for introverts. Historians still argue whether this precise fear has a precedent, if any other global event caused such a simultaneous, synchronized silence. Even world wars had distant zones of calm. But here. From cafes in Milan to temples in Kyoto to bodegas in Queens, the hush fell everywhere. At once. Your city closes schools first. Then restaurants. Then parks. Then your sense of direction. Days blur. There are no Mondays, only yesterday and another one. Your world shrinks to 4 walls and one anxiety playlist. And yet, there's something fascinating about this initial wave of fear. The primal clarity of it. For once, everyone's focused. It's not politics. Not sports. Not even influencers. It's survival, baby. You think of past pandemics, the Black Death, smallpox, Spanish flu. But those are museum plaques. This is your hands cracking from sanitizer. This is FaceTiming your grandma like she's on Mars. This is squinting at a news anchor behind a mask, muffling words like exponential spread and respiratory droplets. Fringe fact. In the early days, people tried using vodka as hand sanitizer. Not to drink it, okay, maybe that too, but literally applying it like Purell. Not strong enough, turns out. But hey, cheers to trying. Also, did you know there was a real global shortage of yeast? People panic-bought flour and started baking like the apocalypse came with a sourdough starter kit. Yes, during one of the deadliest modern events, the world decided, let's make carbs. You stand by your window and watch a man jog by in a snorkel mask. A woman walks her cat. Your neighbor wipes down her mailbox with bleach. It's like a dystopian sitcom where the script is written by both Stephen King and your weird uncle who thinks Wi-Fi causes flu. Whispers rise, did you hear it started in a lab? No, it was a pangolin. Or a bat. Or, some soup. Conspiracies bloom faster than the virus. But you don't know that yet. Right now, you're still adjusting to the idea that touching an elevator button could start a chain reaction ending in someone's ICU visit. You lie in bed that night, listening to silence. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that stretches, eerie and long, like the moment before a thunderclap. You check your phone. The numbers rose again. Not just cases, but countries. It's no longer an outbreak. It's a pandemic. Officially. You'd think it would hit like a movie explosion. But it doesn't. It's more like a slow flood. A rising tide. You don't even notice the waters around your ankles until it's up to your chest. You fall asleep to a fan's hum, your phone screen still glowing beside you. Tomorrow you'll start learning the new language, PPE, N95, community spread, asymptomatic. But tonight, you're still in the prologue. Still wondering if maybe, just maybe, it'll blow over. It won't. But we'll get through it together. Just don't drink the hand sanitizer. You're standing in a market that smells of spices, sweat, and something a little wild. Cages stacked on cages, creatures blinking under fluorescent lights. Somewhere nearby, someone is haggling over a civet. Someone else gestures at a pangolin, curled like a pinecone with a heartbeat. A fruit bat flutters in the rafters, oblivious to the headlines it's about to star in. You're in the epicenter, not geographically, but biologically. Because pandemics don't just appear out of nowhere. They brew. They stew. They simmer in the messy pot of ecosystems and human greed. And eventually, they boil over. Here's what you need to know: viruses love edges. They thrive in places where species overlap, where wild meets urban, where jungle touches suburbia, where humans eat things they really, really shouldn't. And that's exactly what's happening here. It may have started with a single animal. Maybe a bat, carrying a virus its species has known for millennia. No symptoms. No problem. Until that bat drops guano on a pig farm. Or is caught and sold in a market. Or eaten. Maybe someone drinks soup from a bowl that once held a pangolin. Maybe they didn't even notice the scratch on their hand, the tiny tear in their glove. That's all it takes. A handshake between species. One microscopic passport stamp. And just like that, a virus learns to jump. Mainstream history fact. SARS did something similar in 2002. Also from bats, also through a market, also caught the world with its pants down. But this new virus, is sneakier. It hides inside people who don't feel sick. It whispers from throat to throat without a single cough. That's what makes it dangerous. Fringe tidbit. There's a theory, half science, half whispers in the corners of virology, that the more biodiversity you destroy, the closer disease creeps. When forests fall and animals scatter, they bring their viruses to new frontiers. Historians still argue whether this specific pandemic was a product of global ecological imbalance, or just bad soup on a bad day. Either way, it's a reminder: nature never breaks its rules, it just waits for you to. The infected person probably doesn't know. They might feel a little tired. Maybe a tickle in their throat. But they board a train anyway. Or a bus. Or a plane. They breathe, laugh, speak. They carry nothing visible, but everything is already changing. You fast forward a bit. Scientists are scrambling to trace patient zero. It's like playing a game of viral clue. Was it the seafood vendor with the cough in Wuhan? The traveler in Bangkok with the fever? That French tourist who kissed someone goodbye in Milan? The truth is, we'll never know exactly who. Or where. But the story is always the same: a pathogen leaps from animal to human in some quiet corner of the world, and the clock starts ticking. Here's the kicker: there were warnings. Reports, simulations, even TED Talks. Experts shouted from academic rooftops, a pandemic is coming. But governments shrugged. It was always too expensive to prepare, too easy to ignore. You don't install sprinklers in a house that's not on fire, right? So you're standing in that market again. And everything feels normal, until you look closer. The proximity. The unregulated trade. The blurred line between dinner and danger. It's all a recipe. And the virus? It's the chef now. You can almost hear it giggling under a microscope. Invisible. Unstoppable. It doesn't hate you. It doesn't even see you. It just wants to copy itself. Over. And over. And over. You ride the timeline forward again. Weeks pass. The virus hops continents like they're stepping stones. Airplanes become flying petri dishes. And every new host is another roll of the genetic dice. Mutation. Spread. Mutation. Spread. And humans? We do what we always do when something terrifying appears. First, we deny. Then we meme. Then we panic. You start seeing videos of people collapsing in streets, some fake, some not. You hear about doctors silenced, whistleblowers punished. The virus doesn't care about censorship. It just moves. One particularly surreal moment. A cruise ship becomes a floating quarantine zone. Passengers trapped in staterooms, peeking out like cautious meerkats. Watching their salad arrive in hazmat suits. It sounds absurd. Until it's not. Back home, you tell yourself, it won't reach here. But it's already here. It's just playing hide and seek in your airport lounges and Uber back seats. A last fact to chill your spine before you sleep: viruses like this don't need to kill. That's not the goal. In fact, the best ones don't, because dead hosts don't walk around and shake hands. No, the terrifying genius of this virus is how easily it moves in silence. How it uses you to do the work. So as you lie back now, eyes fluttering, you remember that first breath in the market. That unnoticed cough. That single, forgotten handshake. And how the biggest chain reaction in modern memory started with something too small to see, and too patient to stop. You roll your carry-on across glossy airport tiles. The floor reflects your shoes, your nerves, your lack of sleep. You're not sick. You're not even sneezing. But something about this place feels off. People glance around like every throat clear is a starting gun. The flight board flickers. Your gate is still open. For now. This is how it spreads. Not with explosions. With boarding passes. One infected traveler becomes 20 infected cities. You sit in a pressurized metal tube with 100 strangers, all breathing the same air, eating peanuts, watching reruns of movies you never quite meant to watch. Someone coughs in row 18. Someone else wipes their tray with a napkin that's definitely not helping. You land. You walk off. You hug someone. And just like that, it begins again. This is the moment the virus goes global. When it hops borders like potholes and thumbprints. A microscopic fugitive hitching rides on business class tickets and economy meals. Mainstream fact. By mid-January, confirmed cases were already cropping up in Thailand, Japan, and the US. But back then, most people didn't blink. Just a few cases. Contained. Everything's fine. Right? Wrong. Historians still argue whether the global airline industry did enough, or anything, in time. There were talks of screening passengers, temperature checks, even grounding flights. But planes kept flying. And so did the virus. Meanwhile, in one eerily prescient twist of fate, a scientist named Dr. Li Wenliang, who had tried to sound the alarm in Wuhan, was silenced and later died from the very virus he tried to warn the world about. If this were fiction, editors would call it too on the nose. But here we are. You remember reading the news alert, first US case confirmed. Your stomach drops, but you still go to work the next day. You still shake hands. You still joke about it being just like the flu. Fringe tidbit. During this time, some airport security in Asia began using thermal cameras to scan body temperatures en masse. It looked like a sci-fi fever dream, literally. But it didn't catch the asymptomatic ones, the real ghost carriers. They just breezed through customs, clutching passports and pathogens alike. This is the moment when masks become a thing, but also a debate. Are they helpful? Are they useless? Should you wear one even if you're healthy? Experts give mixed answers. Some say masks give a false sense of security. Others say wearing one protects others more than you. The result? Chaos. Some people panic by hundreds. Others scoff entirely. Somewhere in the middle are confused flight attendants just trying to hand out pretzels. You scroll through footage of travelers in hazmat suits, wrapped in cling film like leftovers. Is it overkill? Maybe. But suddenly, it doesn't feel so silly. Airlines scramble. Refunds are denied. Then offered. then denied again. And yet, thousands still fly each day. A cough becomes a red flag. You see someone sneeze and flinch like they just pulled a pin from a grenade. And still, we tell ourselves, it's contained. It's not that deadly. It won't spread here. Spoiler alert, it does. And fast. But here's the kicker, the virus is never just one step ahead, it's 12, moving invisibly while we argue in comment sections. Countries begin reporting clusters. Clusters turn into outbreaks. Outbreaks into emergency zones. The maps on the news start bleeding red like paint in water. You remember that one guy, every pandemic has one, who took a flight knowing he had symptoms. Not to escape, but to get home. To be with his family. The human heart is weird that way. It's noble and careless all at once. And that one choice leads to hundreds of new infections. Choices ripple. In Italy, things go from business as usual to total lockdown in days. Tourists trapped in hotels. Piazzas empty. The Pope addresses the world from a webcam. In Iran, religious pilgrims fall ill in droves. Shrines become hot zones. Doctors beg people not to kiss sacred walls. Many don't listen. Faith and science lock horns, again. In New York, cases double. Then triple. The city that never sleeps starts taking naps. Broadway goes dark. The subways echo with silence. And rats. Always rats. You sit on your bed, scrolling. Your cousin just cancelled her wedding. Your friend can't visit their sick mom in the hospital. A friend of a friend is in quarantine. You cough, and for the first time, you feel scared. Is it just dry air? Allergies? Or suddenly, travel isn't freedom anymore. It's risk. Airports aren't symbols of adventure, they're viral pinball machines. Each flight takes the story to a new country, a new demographic, a new twist. The virus doesn't care about your vacation. It doesn't care about your visa. It moves with breath, with touch, with time. By the time world leaders call it a pandemic, it already is one. You just didn't want to say it yet. No one did. Because the word pandemic means rules have changed. It means the world's on a new channel, and it's not one you picked. And so here you are. Passport in a drawer. Tickets refunded. Watching from your phone as the whole world quietly realizes, this isn't going to be a short story. It's a long, messy epic. And the first chapter just ended with a window seat and a cough. You open the door and step outside. Or rather, you don't. Because now, going outside feels like cracking the lid on a box of bad luck. The world has changed while you weren't looking. Just a week ago, the streets hummed with espresso machines and morning joggers and the distant bark of car horns. Now, they're silent. Like the city's holding its breath, and so are you. Shops are shuttered. Windows are papered over. Closed until further notice, signs multiply like spores. It's not a snow day. It's not a holiday. It's something darker, something that lingers. This is the moment where you realize, everything is shutting down. You do a loop around your apartment, like pacing will reset reality. Your kitchen suddenly matters more than it ever did. Your couch becomes your office, your dinner table, your therapist. And your phone. It becomes your last thread to the outside world. The government says it's for your safety. 2 weeks to flatten the curve. You think, okay, I can do 2 weeks. Easy. You stock up. You freeze everything that can be frozen, peas, pizza, even questionable chicken nuggets. You buy a pack of toilet paper, just one, because you're not like those people. But by the next day, it's gone. All of it. Shelves stripped bare like the Grinch hit your local supermarket. Mainstream fact. In March 2020, panic buying reached levels never seen before. Supermarkets around the globe ran out of toilet paper, rice, disinfectants, and yes, flour. Historians still argue whether this wave of panic was driven by fear of the virus, or fear of each other. You scroll your social feed. Everyone is baking. Everyone is live streaming. Yoga in the living room. Challenges with brooms. People clapping for healthcare workers at 7 p.m. like clockwork. It feels surreal. Like a strange mix of the end times and summer camp. Fringe tidbit. In several parts of Europe, people reported hearing birdsong more clearly than ever. With traffic silenced, nature returned. Swans glided through canals. Deer wandered empty streets. It was peaceful. Beautiful. And utterly eerie. Meanwhile, you hear phrases that sound almost poetic: shelter in place, lockdown, quarantine bubble. They roll off the tongue, but sting the soul. You watch as entire countries draw lines around themselves. Borders close. Flights vanish. Tourism collapses in a heartbeat. And all the while, your world keeps shrinking. Birthdays on Zoom. Weddings postponed. Funerals held by live stream. You begin to measure time by how many times you've washed your hands and rewatched the same 3 shows. You start noticing strange things. You talk to your houseplants. You judge people on TV for standing too close. You forget what jeans feel like. The days blur. The weekdays wear hoodies. The weekends wear sweatpants. No one knows what Friday means anymore. You're not alone, but you've never felt lonelier. The streets may be silent, but your mind isn't. It buzzes with what-ifs and headlines and that one TikTok you regret watching at 3 a.m. Then there's the paradox: you miss people desperately, but also kind of don't want to see anyone ever again. The idea of hugging someone feels ancient. Alien. Like a behavior from a forgotten species. Historians will look back and debate which moment truly tipped the world over the edge. Some will say it was when sports leagues cancelled entire seasons. Others will point to when cities banned gatherings of more than 5 people. For you, maybe it was the moment your favorite cafe locked its doors. Or when you waved at your parents through a car window instead of hugging them. The thing is, no one ever really tells you how weird isolation can be. It's not just boredom. It's the gnawing realization that everything is fragile. Systems. Routines. Your sense of self. You learn new words. Like doom scrolling. Like Zoom fatigue. Like social distancing, an oxymoron that somehow makes sense now. Fringe fact. In the early days of lockdown, Google searches for how to cut your own hair skyrocketed. So did baking recipes. So did home workouts. The world, stuck indoors, collectively tried to reinvent itself, one banana bread at a time. There's a brief moment when you think, maybe this isn't so bad. You can sleep in. Work in pajamas. Rewatch all those movies you said you would. But that wears off. Quickly. Because the silence outside isn't peaceful. It's suffocating. It's filled with the sound of ambulance sirens in the distance. You hear it more each night. A low, mournful wail that reminds you the world is unwell. And then there's the grocery store. The one time you do go out. The way people glance sideways at each other. The tape on the floor marking 6 feet. The plexiglass shields at checkout. The way you hold your breath in every aisle. That moment you touch a can of soup and hesitate, who else touched this? Even the air feels suspect. You wipe down every box with disinfectant. Wash your hands like you're prepping for surgery. You try not to think about the delivery guy. Did he sanitize? Did he cough? You see, the virus is invisible, but its impact is everywhere. In the paper notices taped to playgrounds. In the temporarily closed signs that may never come down. In the friends you haven't seen. The trips you didn't take. The jobs that disappeared overnight. And yet, there's a weird sort of togetherness. You're isolated, yes. But you're part of something colossal. Everyone's living the same strange story. For once, the entire planet is having the same kind of day. You lie down at night and think, this can't last forever. Right? Right? You're sitting on your couch, surrounded by half-eaten snacks and half-finished thoughts, and someone on TV says, flatten the curve. Again. You've heard it so many times, it's starting to sound like a new yoga pose or a minimalist pancake recipe. But really, it's the phrase that defines this moment in history. Flatten the curve. You blink at the chart they're showing, a smooth bell-shaped arc peaking like a polite little mountain. One line soars high and crashes fast. The other, flatter, longer, more manageable. The difference between overwhelmed hospitals and ones that can keep up. The difference between lives lost and lives saved. You don't fully understand the math, but you understand the feeling: stay home now so that others might live later. Mainstream fact. The flatten the curve strategy was first publicized widely during COVID-19, but the idea dates back to at least the 1918 influenza pandemic. Back then, cities like St. Louis implemented early social distancing measures and saw fewer deaths than cities like Philadelphia, which didn't. Historians still argue whether the messaging was effective, or just turned people into obsessive graph watchers. For a while, the world was addicted to curves. Infection curves. Death curves. Economic curves. All of them steep. All of them scary. And so, you became an accidental amateur epidemiologist. You learned the difference between R, the basic reproduction number, and RNOP. You started using terms like exponential growth in casual texts. You made jokes about herd immunity and half understood how vaccines affect population dynamics. You even Googled what a ventilator looks like. But here's the thing, flattening the curve wasn't about making the virus disappear. It was about slowing it down, like outrunning a wildfire by removing the dry brush in its path. Not fighting the flame, just buying time. Fringe tidbit. At one point, certain cities used traffic lights, sirens, or color-coded apps to indicate viral threat levels: green for low risk, red for full-blown panic. It was like living in a video game, except instead of power-ups, your reward for winning was a slightly safer walk to the mailbox. So you stay home. You do your part. But you also start to wonder if it's enough. You see the numbers rising. The charts climbing. And you ask yourself, if I can't see the virus, how do I know this is working? And that's the psychological trap: prevention feels like nothing is happening. If it works, you see no disaster. And if you see no disaster, you question whether it was necessary. It's a strange loop. You flatten the curve by making the scary thing not happen, and then people start to think the scary thing was overblown in the first place. You begin to notice a split forming. On one side are the cautious, the mask wearers, the stay-homers, the careful calculators of how long groceries can stay untouched. On the other side are the skeptics, the restless, the ones sharing conspiracy posts with blurry screenshots and red circles drawn over blurry images. Is this really that bad? Do the numbers even make sense? Are they exaggerating it for control? You try not to fall into that rabbit hole. But you also notice something: the rules keep changing. First, masks weren't necessary. Now they are. First, it wasn't airborne. Now maybe it is. First, it was 2 weeks. Now it's months. Uncertainty breeds exhaustion. And exhaustion, over time, starts to feel like doubt. Still, you hold the line. You work from home, or try to. You attend Zoom meetings in pajama pants, muting your mic to microwave leftovers. You teach your kids math while Googling how fractions even work. You cancel birthdays, trips, weddings, brunches, haircuts. Because the charts tell you to. Historians may one day write about how humanity united around a graph. How billions agreed, at least briefly, that if we all just stayed still, the line would bend. And when it did, people would breathe easier. You look out your window one night. It's quiet. Still. A part of you wonders if all this sacrifice matters. If staying inside actually saved anyone. And then you remember, it's not about you. It's about the stranger you didn't infect. The grandmother who didn't end up in a hospital hallway. The nurse who got one less case to treat. Fringe science fact. Early in the pandemic, computer scientists and statisticians developed crowdsourced models using home computers to simulate viral spread. Millions of users donated processing power to the effort. A kind of digital army working from living rooms. You might have been part of that. Maybe without even realizing. You realize that flattening the curve isn't flashy. It's not heroic. It's actually kind of boring. But boring, in this context, is beautiful. You dim your lights. The graphs keep updating. The curve starts to plateau. And you feel something strange. Not relief. Not yet. But maybe, just maybe, a little bit of control. You're standing outside a hospital now. But you're not visiting. You're just watching, through double doors, through news clips, through stories told in shaky phone videos and exhausted eyes. You're not allowed inside, but everything that's happening in there shapes everything that happens out here. This is the front line. Or maybe more accurately, the fire line. You see the stretchers come in one after another. Gurneys rolling like a conveyor belt of emergencies. Nurses in goggles. Doctors in trash bags, literal trash bags, because the PPE ran out weeks ago. You see the lines, the chaos, the choices no one wants to make. And worst of all, the quiet moments between them. Mainstream fact. In cities like New York, Milan, and Tehran, hospitals were pushed to, and beyond, their limits during the worst waves. Hallways became makeshift ICUs. Refrigerated trucks parked outside as temporary morgues. Ventilator shortages turned into life-or-death logistics puzzles. You imagine being the nurse who works a 16-hour shift, only to sleep in their car because they don't want to risk infecting their family. You imagine being the doctor who has to decide which patient gets a bed, and which doesn't. You imagine being the janitor scrubbing the same floor, knowing their job is just as vital as anyone's in that building. Historians still argue whether governments had enough time to prepare, whether they ignored early warnings, whether health systems were ever built for something like this. The answer is probably no, with a painful sigh attached. Inside, people are doing the impossible. Improvising. Innovating. At one hospital, they modify snorkeling masks into working ventilators using 3D printed valves. Fringe tidbit. One Italian town did exactly that. In a pinch, engineers hacked together emergency breathing apparatuses from decathlon diving gear. Sometimes, necessity wears flippers. And yet, the burnout is brutal. Healthcare workers break down in locker rooms. They hold iPads to dying patients' faces so families can say goodbye. They tape their own names across hazmat suits so coworkers can tell who's inside the plastic. Meanwhile, out in the world, some people are still calling it fake. You see protests, people shouting without masks, waving signs that say, freedom, while nurses inside silently beg for rest. The contrast is enough to make your chest ache. Back in your neighborhood, ambulances blur past every night. The sirens are no longer rare, they're part of your soundscape now. Like crickets or wind. You start counting them, not because you want to, but because you need something to count besides days. The news shows overwhelmed hot zones. But you know that doesn't tell the whole story. Every town has its version of this. The overworked hospital receptionist who hasn't eaten in 12 hours. The medical student pulled from class to insert IVs. The retired nurse who volunteers and ends up intubating strangers. This virus doesn't care how much experience you have. It just keeps coming. Still, there's resilience. You see it in tiny things. A pizza delivered to an ER with a handwritten note, "Thank you." A kid waving at nurses from across the street holding a cardboard heart. A hospital playing music every time a patient is discharged. That one's real. Some hospitals literally played Beyoncé or Sinatra or whatever the staff liked most. Every note was a victory lap. You watch interviews with doctors who are soft-spoken, clear-eyed, and visibly exhausted. They try to reassure the public, but you can hear the tremble in their voices. One of them says, "We don't need applause. We need PPE." Another says, "We're not heroes, we're human." You think about how quickly people shifted from banging pots in celebration, to forgetting. Fringe cultural moment. There was a brief trend in 2020 where people would paint rocks with hearts or rainbows and leave them around hospitals. Just tiny markers of love. It wasn't much. But nothing was much. And yet somehow, it helped. The weird part is, you start to feel guilty. For being safe. For having a job that lets you work from home. For being bored while others are burning out. This is where the pandemic stops feeling abstract. It's not a number anymore. It's a face. A voice behind a plastic shield. A pair of tired hands tied with latex gloves. And the irony? While the world waited for a miracle cure, the real battle wasn't fought in labs. It was fought on stretchers, behind masks, one patient at a time. You sit in the stillness of your room. And for once, you don't check the curve. You don't refresh the news. You just whisper, "Thank you," into the quiet, knowing someone, somewhere, is hearing a very different kind of silence. You're lying on the couch, again, thumbing through your phone, again, when you come across a video. It's blurry. Shaky. Someone's uncle's cousin's neighbor filmed it, probably. A doctor fainting mid-shift. A man being zipped into a body bag. A glowing bottle labeled "miracle cure" that someone swears works. This is the new pandemic, misinformation. And it spreads even faster than the virus. You scroll, and suddenly you're drowning. 1 second it's a meme about washing your hands, the next it's someone claiming 5G towers are to blame. You smirk, but only briefly, because you just saw your aunt share the same thing unironically. The world is locked inside, and the internet becomes the loudest room in the house. Mainstream fact. In 2020, the World Health Organization officially declared an infodemic, an overwhelming flood of false or misleading information that made it harder for people to find trustworthy guidance. Because while scientists were racing for a vaccine, algorithms were racing to show you whatever would make you click. And somewhere in between, you meet a tiger. Or rather, you meet a tiger through your screen. Remember that? The Netflix documentary that took over the planet for a hot minute? Exotic animals. Even more exotic personalities. A murder plot. A mullet. While the world panicked, people suddenly became emotionally invested in a feud between two people who owned too many tigers. It was weird. It was chaotic. It was a perfect distraction. Fringe tidbit. Tiger King premiered March 20th, 2020, and in its first 10 days, over 30 million households watched it. Historians will one day marvel that during one of the most terrifying public health crises in history, the collective therapy session involved a man named Joe Exotic. But distractions only work for so long. Soon, the battle over truth becomes louder. You hear someone say, "It's all a hoax." Someone else swears the numbers are fake. Then someone says bleach might help. You laugh, because what else can you do? But it's not funny. People actually try it. Historians still argue whether governments did enough to fight misinformation early on, or whether they contributed to it by being slow, conflicting, or just plain confusing. Remember the mask debate? One day it's "don't wear masks," the next day it's "please wear a mask," and then suddenly it's "double mask if you can." You don't know what to think anymore. And that's the most dangerous place to be, not wrong, not right, but lost. Because when you're lost, you'll believe anything that gives you clarity. Even if it's wrong. Even if it's dangerous. Your feed becomes a battlefield. Every post, a grenade. Someone says the virus is just like the flu. Someone else posts ICU photos and says, "Tell that to my dad." People start unfriending each other over it. Families argue in group chats. Even science becomes political. And in the middle of it all, the lonely human brain does what it's always done in moments of crisis: it tries to make sense of nonsense. You watch videos of people denying the virus as they're wheeled into ambulances. You watch protesters storm city halls demanding haircuts while ICU nurses hold signs begging for support. Some days, the internet feels like a lifeline. Other days, it feels like poison. You start curating your feed. Muting certain words. Unfollowing old friends. You're not even sure who's right anymore, you just want the noise to stop. But the noise doesn't stop. It just shifts. One day it's hydroxychloroquine. The next, it's UV light. Then, vitamin D. Then, garlic water. You see someone claim to have cured themselves with sound frequencies and goat milk. Fringe. There was a small group online who genuinely believed the virus could be meditated away. Breathe deep. Vibrate higher. Visualize the virus disappearing. You're not sure whether to envy their optimism or block them. Still, you can't help but notice how little it takes to sway people. A confident tone. A few scary charts. A caption in all caps. That's all it takes for someone's uncle to go from reasonable to full-time conspiracy theorist. You realize now, this isn't just a virus that attacks lungs. It attacks trust. It spreads through fear. Through isolation. Through a tiny gap between, I don't know, and, maybe this guy does. You think about the friends you haven't seen in weeks. You think about your mom, forwarding you videos that make you cringe. You think about that guy in your group chat who still insists it's just a cold. And you try to remind yourself, people are scared. People want control. People will believe the first thing that makes them feel safe, even if it's ridiculous. You step away from the screen. You breathe. You remind yourself what you know. You remember that scientists are people, not wizards. That uncertainty doesn't mean incompetence, it means honesty. That it's okay not to have every answer right away. You delete a few apps. You read one actual article, slowly. You try to make peace with not knowing everything. And for tonight, that's enough. You're sitting at the kitchen table when it happens, the push notification lights up your phone like it's a message from the future. First vaccine approved. You stare at it. Read it again. Read it 3 more times just to be sure your eyes aren't making things up out of hope. It's real. Finally, something good is real. Your heart does a little somersault, nervous and excited and unsure. You've waited for this moment like a kid waiting for the bell on the last day of school. But the bell rings different this time. It's not freedom just yet, it's a promise. This is the beginning of the race for immunity. Mainstream fact. The first emergency use approval for a COVID-19 vaccine came in December 2020, less than a year after the virus was identified. An astonishing feat. Vaccines typically take years, sometimes decades. This one took months, using mRNA technology that had been quietly waiting in scientific wings for years. Historians still argue whether the speed of development will be remembered as a medical miracle, or as a source of public skepticism that slowed everything down. Because here's the strange part, not everyone cheers when the news breaks. Some people hesitate. Some people panic. Some people scream, "mind control," from their car windows. And others just quietly wonder, can I trust this? You've never thought much about vaccines before. They were just shots. A few seconds of sting in childhood. Done. Forgotten. But now, suddenly, the science is front-page news. Spike proteins. Lipid nanoparticles. Cold chain storage. You're learning the vocabulary of salvation, one cautious headline at a time. Fringe tidbit. The Pfizer vaccine needed to be stored at -70 degrees Celsius, which led to the rise of ultra-cold freezers, and even pizza delivery bags retrofitted for vaccine transport. Innovation meets logistics, all in the name of hope. The rollout begins, and it's messy. Appointments crash. Systems buckle. Some people cut the line. Others refuse entirely. Old folks wait in folding chairs outside stadiums. Nurses inject arms through car windows in drive-through clinics. You watch your friends post selfies with band-aids and hashtags, #vaccinated, #Team Pfizer, #ModernaGang. It becomes a thing, vaccine identity. People joke about mixing brands like cocktails. Fizz Moderna with a J&J chaser. You laugh, but quietly hope someone in charge knows what they're doing. Still, you count the days. You refresh the app. You check eligibility charts like horoscopes. Until finally, it's your turn. You roll up your sleeve. You hold your breath. The needle goes in, quick and clean. The nurse smiles. You thank them 3 times, awkwardly. And then you sit for 15 minutes, watching strangers in chairs spaced 6 feet apart, all waiting together in one of the weirdest moments of human history. It hits you, this isn't just a shot. It's a doorway. It's a sigh of relief you've been holding for a year. You go home. Your arm is sore. You drink water like they told you. You feel a little different. Not just physically. Mentally. You feel like something has shifted, like hope just cracked the window open. But then comes the second shot. And then the booster. And then talk of new variants. Because yes, the virus mutates. It's not giving up. It's learning. And suddenly words like Delta and Omicron become headlines, become hashtags, become household names. You realize that getting vaccinated isn't the finish line, it's the next step. There are still flare-ups. There are still debates. There are still people refusing, distrusting, insisting. Some say it's their right. Others say it's a responsibility. You try not to yell into the void of comment sections. Fringe moment. A man in Italy tried to get the vaccine with a fake silicone arm. True story. He wanted the certificate without the injection. The nurse caught it immediately. Humans are creative, if nothing else. In some parts of the world, people fight for doses. In others, they throw them away. The gap between countries is glaring. Vaccines flow in waves, not equally. Some continents wait months longer. You start hearing the phrase, vaccine apartheid, and it sticks. You begin to see the larger picture. This isn't just science. It's politics. It's privilege. It's power. And yet, amidst all of that, millions, then billions, get the shot. Little kids cheer when they're finally eligible. Elderly people cry. Health workers breathe a little easier. The world starts to twitch its muscles again. Airlines announce new rules. Concerts test the waters. Cafes reopen with outdoor seating and limited capacity. It's not normal. But it's something. You look at your vaccine card like it's a boarding pass back to the world. You think about all the people who worked around the clock to make this happen. The scientists. The trial volunteers. The delivery drivers. The cold storage engineers. You feel proud. And lucky. And, still a little unsure. But at least now, when you exhale, it feels less like fear, and more like progress. You're walking down the street, mask dangling off one ear, trying to remember what normal used to feel like. It's strange. You can go to the grocery store without a panic attack now. You can eat at a restaurant, outdoors, sure, but still, with actual people. You can even laugh without instantly worrying it'll turn into a cough. This is the era of the new normal. Except no one can quite agree on what that means. You check the signs in shop windows. Some say, masks required. Others say, masks optional. A few are just blank, taped over relics of earlier rules. People glance at each other before entering, trying to decode the social norms like archaeologists uncovering a forgotten ritual. You forget your mask one day and feel naked. You remember it the next day and feel outdated. It's exhausting. Mainstream fact. In many regions, public health guidelines became fragmented after the initial waves. Some cities imposed mask mandates, others lifted them. Some companies required vaccinations for employees, others didn't. The result? A patchwork of behaviors that confused just about everyone. Historians still argue whether this period was one of resilience or stubborn denial, whether the desire to return to normal outweighed the reality of risk. You see it in the office emails, we're transitioning back to in-person. Or, we're adopting a hybrid model. Or the dreaded, we've decided to let you go. Because here's the quiet truth, not everything survived. Businesses folded. Friendships faded. Entire industries shifted. And some people, many people, never came back from what the virus took. Fringe tidbit. In 2021, thousands of companies reported record productivity from remote workers, so much so that some started tracking keystrokes, mouse movement, even webcam activity to make sure people stayed on task. The result? A whole new phrase was born, productivity surveillance. Orwell would be proud. You notice how small talk has changed. People ask, have you had it yet, instead of, how've you been? Getting infected becomes a rite of passage, like catching chickenpox in the 90s. Some people get it and bounce back. Others disappear for weeks. And some don't. You attend your first party in ages and find yourself scanning the room like it's a level in a stealth video game. Who's coughing? Who touched the chips? Is that guy sweating? It's paranoia, sure. But it's learned paranoia. Your brain rewired itself over the past year. And now it won't fully let go. You realize something unsettling. We may have vaccines. We may have treatments. But we don't have closure. Because there's no single day where someone declares, it's over. There's no parade. No ribbon cutting. No final credits rolling over a skyline with swelling music. Instead, there's a slow fade. A gentle, awkward return. A collective tiptoeing back into the light, some faster than others. Fringe cultural moment. In 2022, a wave of memes emerged celebrating Hot Vax Summer, a tongue-in-cheek name for the post-vaccine return to social life. People made playlists. Bought outfits. Planned parties. It was like the roaring 20s in yoga pants. But beneath the glitter was grief. We lost more than we could process at once. Not just people, but routines. Milestones. A sense of safety. You went to sleep in one world, and woke up in another. And now you're trying to make it home without a map. You notice how tired everyone looks. Not sleepy, existentially tired. The kind of weariness that no nap can fix. The kind of emotional sunburn you get from spending too long in uncertainty. You try to shake it off. You start going out more. You catch yourself laughing without flinching. You book a trip. You wear lipstick again, because now someone might actually see it. You dance, awkwardly, joyfully, with friends in a half-full bar. And for a moment, it feels okay. You don't forget what happened. But you stop leading with it. You stop waking up and checking case numbers. You start building forward, not just looking back. Still, some things have changed for good. You now carry a tiny bottle of sanitizer like it's holy water. You notice every sneeze in public like it's a gunshot. You know the exact number of tiles on your kitchen backsplash because you stared at it during 137 Zoom meetings. But you also hold eye contact longer. You appreciate hugs more. You say, "I love you," with less hesitation. Because now you know, it can all be taken so fast. The world didn't hit reset. It hit reboot. And when systems reboot, not everything comes back online the same. You are changed. The people around you are changed. The rules are still blurry. But the sun still rises. The streetlights still flicker. And hope, shaky, flickering, imperfect, still finds a way to glow at the edge of it all. You wake up to a memory you didn't expect to miss: airport noise. The shuffling of bags, the flat voice announcing departures, the mild panic of realizing your gate changed and you're now exactly 2 escalators and 1 existential crisis away from boarding. It used to be exhausting. Now, it's a luxury. Because this is the chapter where the world tries to reopen. Borders start to creak open like old doors. Airlines dust off grounded planes. You see your first boarding pass in what feels like a lifetime and stare at it like it's a golden ticket to reality. But there's paperwork now. So much paperwork. Vaccination status. PCR test results. QR codes. Entry apps. Some countries want nasal swabs. Others want throat ones. Some want both. You joke that your nostrils should earn frequent flyer miles. Mainstream fact. By mid-2021, dozens of nations required digital, vaccine passports or negative tests for entry. Some had full-blown tracking apps, complete with location logs and exposure alerts. Others relied on good faith, or, occasionally, forged PDFs named things like definitely real test result.pdf. Historians still argue whether reopening too early reignited waves of infection, or whether delayed reopening caused more harm economically and emotionally. Either way, everyone agreed on one thing: reopening was complicated. Because reopening isn't just about logistics. It's about trust. You walk into a mall and hesitate at the entrance. Is this okay now? You sit down at a cafe, suddenly hyper-aware of the air around you. You attend a wedding and feel both joy and fear in equal measure. You're learning how to be around people again. Which, weirdly, feels harder than being alone. Fringe tidbit. In some places, businesses used foot-operated elevator buttons or UV light robots to minimize touch. Meanwhile, one Tokyo restaurant installed plexiglass dividers that doubled as digital menu screens. It was the age of cleanliness and cleverness. You start noticing new social dynamics. People ask, "Are you vaccinated?" They mean well, but it still feels weird. Some people announce their status like it's a badge. Others guard it like a secret. Then come the big debates: mandatory vaccinations for workers, school reopenings, events with vax-only attendance. The lines are drawn, not always by science, but by emotion. What one person sees as safety, another sees as control. What one calls responsibility, another calls overreach. You try to keep your opinions to yourself, but it's hard when someone coughs at a concert and the entire crowd shifts 2 feet to the left in synchronized silence. The world starts holding events again. Sports leagues, music festivals, street fairs. There's joy, yes, but also tension. You can feel it in the crowd. Like everyone's waiting for the catch. And sometimes, the catch arrives. A new variant. A sudden spike. An outbreak traced back to one karaoke night or a superspreader wedding. You realize reopening isn't a switch. It's a dial. And it keeps turning, up, down, forward, back. You begin to see patterns. Some countries keep cases low with intense contact tracing and compliance. Others flare up again and again, caught in the loop of opening too fast. Some places reopen restaurants but keep schools closed. Others reopen gyms before hospitals can catch their breath. Fringe moment. For a brief period, certain cities required people to wear color-coded wristbands to signify comfort level: green for, hug me; yellow for, fist bump; red for, please stay away. It was human traffic control, pandemic edition. Travel resumes, but it's different. Airlines now board by back rows first. Finally, logic prevails. Masks on planes are required, then optional, then required again. You learn how to smile with your eyes. You also learn who refuses to wear a mask while shouting, "Personal liberty," in row 22C. Still, you book the trip. You take the photo. You post, "First flight in 2 years, face with medical mask, airplane, red heart." You land. You breathe foreign air. You cry a little in the hotel bathroom, not from sadness, but from the strangeness of being somewhere else. Of remembering that the world didn't disappear, it just paused. And now, cautiously, it's pressing play. You go out at night and see people laughing under fairy lights, holding drinks, passing around plates like they don't remember what the past 2 years were like. Part of you wants to join. Part of you wants to leave. Part of you just watches. Because reopening isn't just about the world. It's about you. And what you're willing to let back in. You realize you're not the same traveler. Not the same neighbor. Not the same version of you that entered this storm. You're slower. More careful. More grateful for the smallest things: airplane coffee, bookstore browsing, a stranger's smile. You walk the streets of a new city at sunset, the wind playing with your hair. And even though a part of your brain is still cataloging risks, surface contact, crowd density, airflow, you let your feet guide you forward. And in that moment, for the first time in a long time, the world doesn't feel fragile. It feels alive. You're back home now. Your suitcase is half unpacked, your inbox overflowing, your sleep schedule wrecked, but your heart feels a little lighter. You made it out, saw the world again, remembered how it breathes. But the return comes with baggage, some emotional, some literal. This is when it really sinks in: some things will never be the same. You go to your favorite coffee shop and notice the menu's shorter. Your favorite pastry. Gone. The staff. Half new. The tables are spaced wider now, and there's a QR code taped to the wall where the chalkboard specials used to be. Mainstream fact. The pandemic led to the permanent closure of over 100,000 small businesses in the US alone, and millions more around the globe. Supply chains broke. Rent stacked up. Customers vanished. Some places came back. Others didn't. And even the ones that did are a little ghosted. You sit by the window and sip your coffee, lukewarm, but precious. Outside, masked kids play tag with rules they've internalized. You wonder if they'll remember this in 20 years the way your grandparents remembered ration books and air raid drills. Historians still argue whether the pandemic marked a turning point in generational psychology, a shift in how children see health, risk, and trust. You already see it happening. Young kids call masks face shirts. Teens joke about trauma in TikToks. 20-somethings cling to their pets like they're emotional support therapists with fur. Fringe tidbit. In 2020, there was a global spike in pet adoptions, nicknamed the puppy pandemic boom. Shelters ran out of animals. People stood in line for goldfish. For months, if you owned a dog, you weren't just walking it, you were emotionally walking yourself. You see it in your own routines, too. You still sanitize shopping carts even though no one talks about surfaces anymore. You instinctively give people space in lines. And when someone coughs in public, your entire nervous system sounds the silent alarm. You laugh at yourself. But it's not funny, really. Because the past few years rewired you. And you're not sure which settings will reset. You see it in your relationships. Some friendships fizzled, burned out over too many missed calls and mismatched boundaries. Others deepened. You started checking in more, even if it was just a late night, "How's your brain?" text. Some people couldn't handle the tension. Others became your lifelines. You realize how fragile connection really is. And how lucky we are every time someone answers. The workplace? Still upside down. Some people never went back to the office. Others did, and immediately questioned their life choices. The term Zoom fatigue becomes shorthand for a much deeper exhaustion. Fringe shift. The pandemic normalized the soft quitting trend, people refusing to overextend, walking away from hustle culture, choosing mental health over endless productivity. It wasn't a rebellion. It was a quiet rebalancing. You stop measuring success by how busy you are. You start valuing calm, kindness, quiet dinners. You find joy in dumb things like vacuuming or finishing a book. You let yourself slow down without guilt, and that might be the most radical change of all. But there's still a weird guilt that lingers. For the people who didn't make it. For the weddings you missed. For the funerals that happened over live streams. For the way you sometimes felt relieved to have an excuse not to go out, even while others suffered. The grief isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a soft ache at 2 a.m. when your brain replays one too many headlines. But you also feel gratitude. For the scientists who didn't sleep. For the teachers who adapted. For the delivery workers, the nurses, the garbage collectors, the farmers. For your own body, even when it felt like it was failing. For your mind, even when it cracked a little. You realize the pandemic didn't change everything. It just revealed everything. It held up a mirror and said, "Look." And you did. You saw what you needed. Who you trusted. What mattered. What didn't. You saw how fast the world could fall apart. And how hard people would fight to put it back together. You take another sip of your now cold coffee. A kid laughs outside, mask dangling from one ear like yours used to. The sky is weirdly perfect. Blue, with that early evening gold that makes you want to freeze time. You don't have all the answers. No one does. But you made it through. You're here. And that, somehow, feels like enough. You're looking at a photo. It's from 2 years ago, maybe more. A group shot. You're in the middle, laughing, arms slung casually over two friends. There are no masks. No distance. No fear. And it feels alien. That was before. Before the lockdowns, before the numbers, before you learned what a cytokine storm was or how to pronounce immunocompromised. Before you became a quiet expert in virology just to make sense of dinner plans. Now, you hold your phone and squint at that older version of you. They look the same, but they aren't. Because you, my friend, are part of the post-pandemic generation, even if the pandemic hasn't quite ended. Mainstream fact. Every global catastrophe leaves psychological footprints. World War II forged resilience. The Cold War shaped paranoia. The pandemic? It rewired our sense of space, touch, community, and control. You used to shake hands without thinking. Now, it feels like an agreement signed in invisible ink. You used to cough and blame the air conditioning. Now, you stop breathing for a moment and scan the room to see if anyone noticed. Historians still argue whether the post-pandemic culture will be one of renewal or resignation, whether people will emerge more connected, or more walled off. It might be both. Fringe cultural moment. In 2023, a subculture known as neo-hermits began trending on social platforms, people who, even after vaccines and reopenings, chose to remain indoors by choice. Some built entire indoor gardens. Others turned apartments into self-sufficient cocoons. They weren't afraid. Just, done. And yet, the world outside pulses louder than ever. Concerts sell out. Flights are packed. Cafes buzz louder, almost making up for the lost time. You start seeing little revolutions in behavior. Strangers nod instead of shake hands. People speak more softly in public. Introverts develop an almost mystical aura of wisdom. They were ready for this, the memes say. You look at the systems around you with new eyes. You see how fragile everything was: healthcare, education, the economy. You also see the cracks that let light in. Work doesn't have to mean an office. School doesn't have to mean a building. Meetings don't need to be daily. Rest doesn't have to be earned through burnout. You hear people say things like, "I don't want to go back to how it was." And it hits you, neither do you. Because you've grown. Not just older, wider. Wider in perspective. In patience. In your definition of enough. You see your friends again, but now with context. You ask deeper questions. You listen longer. You notice who kept showing up when things got quiet. You go to a wedding and feel every laugh land a little softer. You visit your parents and hug them longer than you ever did before. You walk through a bookstore and feel almost religious in the presence of ordinary things. You find beauty in quiet durability. The coffee mug that survived lockdowns. The houseplant that refused to die. The neighbor you wave to every evening at 7 p.m. during the "Thank You Essential Workers" chorus, even if you never learned their name. Fringe tidbit. In 2021, there was a boom in letter writing. Actual, physical letters. People rediscovered paper as a form of presence. No red receipts. No typing bubbles. Just ink, time, and thought. Old school, heartfelt, oddly intimate. You start to realize the value of slowness. The value of a walk without headphones. The joy of finishing a book. The power of saying no to anything that drains your soul. And you realize, you don't have to go back. You can go forward, gently. With intention. With new rituals. With boundaries built not from fear, but from clarity. You watch the world reinvent itself. Street markets return with fewer stalls but warmer energy. Schools keep the option for hybrid learning, not because it's ideal, but because it helps. Restaurants ditch printed menus altogether. QR codes are the new napkins. Some things stay changed. Others slide back. And a few, just a few, become better. Because the pandemic didn't just take. It revealed. It revealed how fragile we are, yes, but also how adaptable. How deeply we need each other. How quickly we can find joy again. You take one last look at that old photo. You smile. Not because you want to be that person again, but because you finally understand what they didn't. Nothing is permanent. Not even fear. You're standing in a quiet museum. Not a grand one, no towering dinosaur skeletons or marble angels. This one is tucked away in a renovated library wing, with pale lighting and softly humming AC. A temporary exhibit. The sign reads, "The Pandemic Years." You step inside, unsure what to expect. A strange feeling grows in your chest, familiarity mixed with distance. Like opening an old journal and not recognizing your own handwriting. You see a display of masks. Cloth ones, surgical ones, even one hand-sewn from an old concert t-shirt. A little sign next to them explains how communities around the world crafted their own in the absence of supply. Mainstream fact. In early 2020, global shortages left hospitals and households scrambling. Volunteers mobilized. Grandmas dug out sewing machines. Fashion houses pivoted from couture to cotton. And beside the masks, hand sanitizer bottles in every shape, scent, and novelty container imaginable. You chuckle at one that says, "Kills 99.9% of germs and 100% of vibes." Then you turn a corner and see the things that hit harder. A laptop on display with a plaque, used for 1,302 hours of remote school. A single desk. A paper sign, "Please mute your mic." A broken webcam. A crumpled sticky note with scribbled math problems and the word bored doodled 20 times around the edge. This is when you feel the weight. Because this isn't history from centuries ago. This is your story. And it's barely cooled. Historians still argue whether it's too soon to memorialize a tragedy still echoing through our daily lives. But you realize, remembering is part of healing. There's a wall covered in notes, handwritten. Messages left by visitors, each one a quiet echo of grief or gratitude or both. My dad was a doctor. I still can't walk past a hospital without crying. Thanks to the delivery drivers. You kept us sane. I made banana bread. So much banana bread. Still scared. Still thankful. Still here. Fringe fact. In late 2021, several cities began installing pandemic time capsules, collecting items like thermometer guns, vaccine cards, positive test kits, even toilet paper rolls, symbols of a time where everyday objects carried extraordinary weight. You step back and see the timeline stretched along the wall. A year of silence. A year of sound. A year of shouting. A year of whispering. Your eyes scan the list of dates, lockdowns. Variants. Vaccines. Misinformation spikes. Mental health crises. Protests. Celebrations. It's like watching a storm roll in slow motion, frame by frame. And in the center of the room, screens. Not one, but many. Playing loops of video calls. Family dinners with buffering. Birthday songs sung out of sync. Zoom funerals with flickering connections. Virtual weddings with pixelated vows. You sit on a bench and let it wash over you. You remember your own moments. The birthdays celebrated through glass. The friendships saved by 3 a.m. texts. The tears cried when no one was watching. The tiny joys you clung to because that's all there was. You remember learning to bake. Trying yoga. Giving up on yoga. Screaming into a pillow. Laughing at memes. Feeling guilt for laughing. Trying again the next day. You leave the museum quieter. Not sad, exactly. Just, full. You pass a mirror on the way out and pause. You look the same. But now you understand what your reflection carries, the invisible weight of experience. Of endurance. Of learning to breathe in a world that forgot how. You walk back into daylight, and everything seems a little sharper. The trees. The smell of food carts. The echo of a child's laughter down the block. And you know something deeply, unmistakably true, there will be other storms. Other panics. Other long winters. But there will also be this. The memory of getting through something that felt unget-throughable. You survived history. You survived yourself. And now, you carry the map, drawn in hindsight, written in sweat and silence and the occasional loaf of banana bread. You're sitting with a group of friends, some old, some newer, on a rooftop under string lights that sway with the wind. There's music playing softly, and for once, no one's scrolling on their phones. Everyone's just, here. This is the part where you start to realize that collective memory has a rhythm. Some beats are loud, shouted from headlines and history books. Others are small, soft footnotes shared in whispers, stories traded over cups of tea, or in half-laughed confessions on nights like this. One friend says, "Remember when we all thought lockdown would last 2 weeks?" Everyone laughs. A real laugh. The kind that comes with layers. Another adds, "I still have 20 cans of beans in my pantry." Laughter again. Bittersweet. But underneath it all is the unspoken agreement, we changed. Mainstream fact. Sociologists now describe the 2020s as a period of accelerated personal reevaluation. People quit jobs en masse, a phenomenon dubbed the Great Resignation, moved cities, ended relationships, started hobbies, changed identities. It wasn't just a health crisis, it was a mirror. Historians still argue whether this moment will be remembered as a brief pause, or the beginning of a slow revolution in how society values time, labor, connection. You sip your drink and think back to where you were at the start of it all. What you feared. What you clung to. What you thought you couldn't live without, and did. Fringe tidbit. In a small town in the Netherlands, a psychologist started holding grief cafes, open gatherings where people could sit, sip coffee, and speak openly about what the pandemic took from them. They shared stories about lost loved ones, missed milestones, even lost versions of themselves. It spread, quietly, to other cities. You think about your own losses. Not just people. Moments. Versions of yourself that don't exist anymore. And yet, in their place, growth. You've learned how to say no, you've learned how to sit in silence and not panic. You've learned that boredom isn't a weakness, it's a space where creativity can bloom. You've learned that being alone and being lonely are not the same thing. The world around you reflects it, too. Public spaces feel more intentional now. Libraries install more quiet corners. Offices shrink in size but expand in flexibility. Parks stay open later. Museums now archive tweets and memes, yes, even the one with the dog saying, "This is fine," while surrounded by flames. Fringe shift. A wave of architects and city planners now incorporate pandemic design logic, better airflow, wider sidewalks, built-in touchless tech, outdoor meeting zones. Buildings are becoming more empathetic, almost as if they've learned, too. You take out your phone and scroll through your photos from the past few years. Empty streets. Screenshots of Zooms. Clipped headlines. A loaf of sourdough you were way too proud of. A blurry selfie with your dog, both wearing matching masks. You used to think you'd want to forget this era. Now, you're not so sure. Because forgetting would mean losing the lessons. And if there's one thing this pandemic taught you, it's that you never want to live that blind again. You look around your rooftop gathering and see not just people, but survivors. Of chaos. Of uncertainty. Of their own inner storms. You clink glasses. Not in celebration, exactly, but in acknowledgement. We made it through something. Something massive. Something invisible. Something that will take the rest of our lives to fully understand. And in the spaces left behind, we now plant different things. Better questions. Wiser intentions. Slower breaths. You're not interested in going back to normal. You want better than normal. You want true presence. You want to ask someone how they are, and really mean it. You want fewer meetings, more meaning. Less noise, more listening. Because life, as it turns out, is fragile. But also strangely resilient. Like a flower pushing through concrete. Like your own heart, beating even when the world stopped. You stay on the rooftop long after the music fades. Someone starts humming. Someone else wraps themselves in a blanket. No one rushes to leave. And you smile, not because it's over, but because you're still here. You're walking home in the dark. The streets aren't silent, but they're quieter than you remember. The kind of quiet that feels respectful, like the world is still catching its breath. And maybe, so are you. You pass an old bookstore with a hand-painted sign still taped to the door, closed due to COVID-19. Stay safe. We love you. It's faded now. The corner's curled like an old leaf. But you stop to read it anyway. Because it reminds you, this happened. This wasn't a dream. This was your life. And your loss. And, somehow, your growth. Mainstream fact. As of 2024, more than 6.9 million people have died worldwide from the virus. An entire generation is now shaped by that grief. For many, this became their defining historical moment, like 9/11, or the fall of the Berlin Wall, or the moon landing, but in slow motion in sweatpants. Historians still argue whether this pandemic will spark a global health revolution, or fade into history like so many crises before it, remembered only when the next one arrives. But you know better. Because memory lives in places people forget to look. In the way you wash your hands longer now. In how you notice the air quality. In the extra masks in your backpack. In the reflex to check for exits. In how you read a stranger's eyes, searching for a signal of trust. Fringe tidbit. In Iceland, after cases dropped dramatically, artists began weaving face masks into tapestries, not just as materials, but as symbols. Pieces of shared trauma, stitched into something strangely beautiful. You turn the corner. Your apartment is ahead. Familiar windows. A flickering porch light. You used to see it as just a building. Now it's a shelter. A haven. A tiny witness to all the versions of you that paced and panicked and made peace inside its walls. You step inside. Kick off your shoes. Hear the soft hum of your fridge. Smell the ghost of this morning's coffee. You sit down, not to do anything. Just, to be. And here, in this ordinary moment, you feel the strange glow of something holy. Because survival isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just sitting quietly with yourself, knowing you've endured. You think back to the start. The fear. The uncertainty. The graphs. The daily briefings. The noise. The silence. The weirdness of watching a planet pause. And now, here you are. Not the same. Not unscarred. But still you. A little wiser. A little kinder. A little more aware of how thin the line is between normal and not. The world will spin again. Faster, louder, more distracted. But in you, something has shifted permanently. You know how to pause. You know how to hold what matters. You know what loss sounds like, and how precious a laugh can be. This isn't the end of the story. It's just the part where you understand the stakes. And choose to keep going anyway. Because if the pandemic taught you anything, it's this: life doesn't ask if you're ready. But it does offer you the chance to grow through the storm. And you? You took it. So now, the lights are low. The noise of the day fades, like fog lifting from a quiet field. You're here, safe, breathing, and real. And whether your day was full or empty, joyful or heavy, you made it through. That matters. Let your body settle into stillness. Let your breath slow, no need to control it. Just, notice. The steady in. The gentle out. The rhythm that's carried you through every version of this strange, unpredictable chapter in history. Let your mind drift now, not into worry, but into reflection. Into softness. Because while the world has changed, and may change again, the quiet truth is this: you've already proven that you can adapt, grow, and endure. Even when the news screamed. Even when the days blurred together. Even when fear lived on your skin like a second layer. Still, you endured. You held on to what mattered. You made new meaning in places that used to feel hollow. You chose compassion, sometimes for others, sometimes for yourself. And tonight, you deserve rest. Not as a reward. Not because you were productive. But because being human is tiring. And beautiful. And strange. And you did it again today. So wherever you are right now, in bed, on the couch, in the quiet glow of a late-night screen, let your shoulders loosen. Let your breath deepen. Let your eyes close, knowing that sleep is a kind of healing, too. Tomorrow will come. It always does. But for now, you've reached a place of pause. Let that be enough. Good night, beautiful soul. The storm passed. You're still here. And the world. It still holds space for your light.